Hello once again, and welcome to the saskagtoday.com roundtable. I'm your host, GX94 Yorkton Agriculture Director Doug Falconer. I'm joined by 620 CKRM Agri-News Director Ryan Young and saskagtoday.com Chief Agricultural Editor Kevin Hursh for today's program. And first of all, Bill C-234 just keeps on making the headlines as we continue to wait for it to get passed in the Senate. Ryan?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been front and center over these last few weeks. It's garnered a lot of national attention, and by extension, the carbon tax as well. Some of the latest developments on 234, as the House of Commons and the Senate are taking a week-long break. They should be back on Monday, the Senate for Tuesday. That's when the next time the bill should be debated once again. Still currently in third reading, and last time we talked, I was under the impression that it was going to be passed soon, but some senators who are opposed to it are kind of filibustering this as much as they can. And in the meantime, it's garnered some reaction from farmers as well as the Western Canadian Wheat Growers Association. I talked with the chair, Daryl Francoux, about it and just how things have gone back and forth in the recent weeks. And he's said similar things, not too much different from others that I've talked to. He said, it's about time Ottawa should stop playing games and get the bill passed so that farmers can get a break on this and we can deliver the high quality food and produce the high quality food at an affordable price for Canadians and others around the world. So there's a growing call for this bill to be passed, as well as I've also heard that there's going to be a number of rallies all across the country with respect to passing Bill 234.
Kevin?
It's been a long time in the making, this bill to take the carbon tax off natural gas and propane for drying grain and for heating and cooling livestock barns. You'd think it would be if you're going to eventually pass it, and the liberals or liberal leaning senators or supposedly independent, but independent liberals might be the best way to talk about it in the Senate doing this filibustering. I can't see how they can perceive this as being popular in the ag community when so many, virtually all farm groups are behind this.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, too, some conservatives, whether that's from the federal Conservative Party, MPs, or conservative-leaning senators, they've accused the Liberal government of trying to influence some senators in voting against Bill 234. One of them, David Wells, saying as much as, the fix is in on the bill. And interestingly enough, too, the Environment Minister, Stephen Guilbeault, he was named by David Wells as being one of those people trying to influence senators. And Guilbeault refuted those allegations in a news conference on Tuesday, saying, hey, like, all I've done is just have a conversation with give or take half a dozen senators about the bill, why the federal government is against the bill, its position, and why. And that's it. Haven't tried to influence anybody.
So supposedly it's almost like the apex of the whole debate about carbon tax generally, and this seems to be the slippery slope when they took carbon tax off heating fuel, heating oil in Atlantic Canada, and the calls reverberated across the country for parallel removal of carbon tax over other heating methods such as natural gas. This has sort of got caught up in that whole fight or that whole movement, I think.
I think a lot of people see this too as perhaps a house of cards that you pull one and the whole carbon tax could come crashing down. Is that kind of what you've been hearing as well, Kevin?
Well, it'll be interesting to see. I think it would be very difficult for the Liberals to back away from the carbon tax, but I really perceive that the conservative position of axe the tax, which wasn't their position going into the last federal election. They had invented some other method of doing the carbon tax, but not as simple as axe the tax. But I think with inflation and the cost of food and the cost of housing and high interest rates, that Canadians have changed their opinion, and even though that many Canadians support climate action, I think that there's a feeling that a carbon tax has not been a very effective way of accomplishing it.
All right, we'll move on to our next topic, and that was the markets. And I know, Ryan, you spoke with Adam Pacalo about the markets. Canola was up, I think, for the most part this week, and then it went down a little bit today, and wheat has been down for a good chunk of the week. That's what you got from Adam today?
Yeah, pretty much when I was talking with Adam today, while he was out and about on the road, he was saying that canola did go up this week about $18 a ton to around that $700 mark, just above it. But it was actually higher just a few days ago, as high as $725. So yeah, it's been kind of hovering around that $700 mark for quite a while. It's kind of hard to gauge like where it's going to go and what factors are influencing it. Crude oil, weaker Canadian dollar, obviously the soybean market. That's been one of the key things Adam looks for with the canola futures. Whether soybeans goes high or lower, that's where canola usually follows. So it'll be interesting to see what happens moving forward, whether it continues to plateau around that mark or finally sees a rally or two. As far as the wheat futures are concerned, it's been kind of going down a little bit. It was down about 12 cents a bushel on the week to around that $7.18 range. Not a whole lot of demand for wheat, for based on the last couple of market outlooks I've heard and read about, not a whole lot of demand around the world for wheat. I've only seen like a few tenders from a few countries of in the tens of thousands of metric tons and all that. So it'll be interesting to see what comes next. Kevin, what are your kind of thoughts on it?
I've seen some analysis that suggests canola and soybeans tend to follow each other in a rough manner, but that canola is at a historically large discount to soybeans right now. Now, what that means for the future of the price, I'm not sure. There's also a great number of the hedge funds that are short canola, playing short, betting that it's going to go even lower. But on the other hand, crush margins are very healthy. Crush plants are going full bore ahead. So it's hard to know where this is all going to shake out. But certainly as a huge commodity in the prairie region, this is really something producers follow with great interest. Also, on a couple of other fronts, there are a few new crop contract prices out. Had a sniff of a little bit of business being done on some brown mustard and also some large green lentils that are in high demand and high price. There are some contract prices now starting to come out on that. So this is the season between now all the way into early to mid-January when a lot of the new crop contract prices become available.
Do you still have some canola and wheat in the bin that you're still looking at marketing, Kevin?
I've got some canola, not usually a canola grower, but I grew some canola with very bad yields last year. And some of that is actually in storage at a terminal and some of it's in the bin. And I don't have any wheat on the farm, haven't grown wheat or durum in a few years. So I'm a bit of an anomaly. The only thing really that is on the farm is seed for the upcoming year on canary seed and chickpeas. And also it's all contracted, but hasn't moved yet, quite a quantity of brown mustard. So I'm more of a specialty crop grower, and canola was the one-off last year that I did grow some canola.
Well, speaking of canola, there was an announcement this week of the Canola Council of Canada in concert with the federal government, with Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, $9 million being injected into canola research by Ottawa. And that, I guess, joins up with some funding from the Canola Council. It sounds like, obviously that's good to hear that they're working on research, but Kevin, we'll see where it all takes us.
Yeah, there's these clusters, and the government likes to take a bow and make the big announcement, but the cluster funding is follows a firm set of rules and is administered by bureaucrats. And there's a canola cluster that has the bunch of the canola interests involved. There's wheat, there's agronomy, there's pulse crop cluster, there's a diverse field crop cluster for some of the more minor acreage specialty crops. And this is a major source of funding for them, but hidden in an announcement like this, nobody wants to complain at the time the money is announced, but cluster funding has been skewed quite a bit so that a lot of the projects have to do with greenhouse gas mitigation. And if you don't meet the targets for how many research projects and how many dollars your cluster is doing towards greenhouse gas mitigation, you don't get the funding approved. And in many cases, funding for variety development has been something that clusters are now less and less willing to fund. So always good news when research money is announced and research projects get funded, but behind the scenes in all of these clusters, there is some consternation.
All right, and of course, Ducks Unlimited announced this week that they're going to be working on a partnership with Farm Credit Canada. Ducks Unlimited has that marginal areas program that they've had for, I think it's the last 3 or 4 years now, where producers are encouraged to seed unproductive farmland back to forages or grass or whatever the case may be. And it sounds like Farm Credit Canada is jumping in on this. Is that good news, Kevin?
I haven't followed it as closely as you, but certainly there's a number of initiatives for that. And in many cases, it makes great sense. Where it's difficult, and I see it in my own fields, is where the unproductive marginal land, often saline patches, are out in the middle of a field. And then how do you partition those acres out of the main field without making it very difficult to farm? But on fields where the marginal patches are along edges or borders or can be clearly cut off from main fields, I think it just makes so much great sense not to be pouring a whole bunch of production assets into ground that's not going to produce under annual crops and would be much better under forage, and if it's saline ground, much better under saline tolerant forage crops.
And I would just add too, it kind of reminded me of a similar initiative brought in by the Canadian Cattle Association, Ducks Unlimited, and another a couple other cattle groups called the Grassland Conservation Initiative. So it's really nice to see all of these farm groups coming together and really making an effort to conserve as much grasslands and other kinds of lands as possible. Really nice to see a really good environmental stewardship.
Yeah, exactly. If that land is unproductive, it might as well do something, I guess, to help the environment, right? So, good way to go. And of course, next week is Agribition in Regina. And I know, Ryan, sounds like you're going to be spending a lot of time down there next week.
I know. I'm basically going to be living there for the next week or so at the Real District in Regina. I'm very excited and looking forward to checking it all out at Agribition. There's going to be a lot of things going on. I had the opportunity to talk to the event CEO, Sean Kindop, just to get a sense of what's going to be featured and what's going to be happening at the event. A couple of new things. One is called the Animal Ag Tech Awards. He feels that, give the animal ag tech sector of the agriculture industry some love. And it'll be interesting to see what is brought forward. Not really familiar when it comes to animal ag tech and what that all entails, but it almost kind of sounds like a presentation of different types of technologies to a panel of investors and getting awards for innovation and best tech, so to speak. So it'll be interesting to find out what that all kind of entails. And another thing that's new is freestyle bullfighting. There's going to be some bullfighters coming up to compete in that. And I always look forward to those kinds of things at rodeos, like bull riding and bullfighting. So those are one of the things that Sean is looking forward to the most. I almost forgot to ask him about if he was going to participate in one of those things or if he had the willingness to. I should probably ask him when I'm there in person. So definitely looking forward to it.
Well, I think there's a media bullfighting category there, Ryan. So I think you got signed up for it, from what I've heard.
Yeah, I think we signed him up for it. He's the guy that gets to be in that barrel as the bull bounces around, I think.
It'd be like going over Niagara Falls.
Over the Brandt Center.
Yeah. And of course, Kevin, I know you've been to Agribition in the past. It's always pretty interesting to check out. And a lot of people get together. Some people who haven't seen each other for an entire year get a chance to see each other again. It's a pretty good social event, really.
It's great. It's a great bringing of people together, especially the purebred cattle industry. We tend to forget with all the entertainment events that this really is a showcase for the purebred cattle industry, and thousands of head of purebred livestock there that are the breeding stock for the commercial herds a little further down the line. So a great place for the cattle industry for sure.
And there's a lot of international attention on this too. He told me that there was he was expecting around representation from 70 different countries. So that's quite the number, actually. A lot more than what I would expect for something like Agribition.
Yeah. Well, they're all looking for genetics, right? You'll see a lot of money will be changing hands at this event. All right. Well, I guess that'll wrap it up for this week for today's edition of the Roundtable. On behalf of Chief Agricultural Editor for SaskAgToday.com, Kevin Hursh, and 620 CKRM Agri News Director Ryan Young, I'm GX94 Agriculture Director Doug Falconer, saying so long until next week.